Welcome back to Sissy Maya. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss an update. Additionally, consider subscribing to my Patreon to get access to these features, and much more. It's hard to grasp just how much my life has changed in such a short time. Let me explain. My name is Clara Duval. Well, that's the name I've had for the past 9 months. Right now, I'm sitting at my fiancé's writing desk in his grand library, admiring the sunlight pouring through the large French windows, casting a warm glow over the beautiful patchwork of Derbyshire hills. I feel happier and luckier than I ever thought possible. I could almost tear up with gratitude for the wonderful life I have now. Steve, my fiancé, is incredibly successful and generous. It won't be surprising to hear that I'm dressed in an elegant silk ivory blouse, a beige Chanel skirt, and sparkling court shoes. Underneath, I'm wearing delicate white lace lingerie that Steve prefers I wear when he's around. My hair is styled in a sophisticated cut, thanks to my personal assistant, Leslie. With my makeup perfectly done and nails manicured, I can't help but admire the peaceful and serene atmosphere around me. I'm sure you're thinking, here's another woman living off a rich partner. Well, yes, Steve gives me everything I want, but that hasn't always been the case. A year ago, I could never have imagined my life would take such a dramatic turn. Before that, life wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. I worked at a local biscuit factory in a small Scottish town, surrounded by others in their 20s who were stuck in a rut. My life was a cycle of work, eat, sleep. I'd retreat to my room, my mind filled with dreams that seemed impossible. My parents' house, though quiet, was often heavy with tension from my presence. And then things changed. The factory manager, Mr. O'Hare, gathered us all on the shop floor to deliver some unexpected news. The factory was closing, and production was moving to Poland. At first, I didn't know how to feel. I was sad about losing my job, but relieved that I wouldn't have to make biscuits anymore. As expected, my father's main concern shifted to money. He made it clear that I had to find a job or leave. My mother, though supportive of me staying, agreed with him. I didn't have much choice, so when Mr. O'Hare offered a retraining program for former employees, I accepted without hesitation. He seemed to take pleasure in making these announcements, though my mother insisted her bridge lessons with him had nothing to do with it. The training was 400 miles away in England, and Mr. O'Hare arranged for me to stay in a nearby B&B. The room was basic but large enough for my needs. On the third morning, the B&B owner, Eddie, told me I had to switch rooms that day. He said the girls would take care of it. Though it caught me off guard, I said okay and carried on with the day. It wasn't until later that afternoon, during a lesson on soldering, that panic set in. I suddenly realized what I had forgotten in my room, all my female clothes scattered across the place. My heart raced. I could feel my pulse in my neck and head. I had made myself vulnerable in a way I never had before. I was terrified that someone would discover my secret, that I enjoyed dressing in women's clothing. The walk back that evening felt unbearably slow. Part of me was saying, don't go back, go home to safety, your mom will understand. Another part was hoping, maybe they haven't touched your room yet. But when I arrived at the B&B, it was clear the situation had already shifted. There, standing with wide grins, were Eddie's wife, Rose, and her 2 daughters, Megan and Estelle, all looking as if they'd just gotten away with something. In that moment, I realized my life had already changed, but I didn't yet know how deeply. Estelle broke the silence first, turning to Megan and saying, "Look, she's blushing." That made me laugh nervously, and before I knew it, we were all laughing together. Rose winked at me and left, and Estelle gently took my hand, leading me to her room. I followed, unsure of what to expect but feeling a strange excitement, not only because I didn't know what was coming but also because it felt good to be around others, something I'd missed at home. Once inside her room, I was invited to sit on the single bed, with Estelle sitting close beside me and Megan standing nearby. Estelle asked in her soft northern accent, "How long have you wanted to be a girl?" Still nervous, I blushed and replied, "As long as I can remember." This seemed to trigger a nurturing instinct in Estelle, who immediately wrapped her arms around me, holding me on the bed for what felt like ages. Despite the emotional whirlwind, I could still think clearly enough to notice the girl's clothes. Megan probably wore a size 12, and Estelle was closer to a 14. Megan, breaking the silence, said, "Don't worry, we'll help you however we can." I thanked them, feeling a mixture of gratitude and nervousness. After releasing me from their embrace, Estelle mentioned that they were taking me somewhere special the following evening, so I was to make sure I was smooth, which, fortunately, I already was. I couldn't stand body hair. The rest of the day at plumber school felt like a blur, my mind racing with anticipation. At 6 p.m., Megan led me to Rose's car, and we drove several miles to a small shop with the sign Tentos. Inside, Estelle was waiting for me with a tall, elegant woman named Isabel, who confidently announced that she was going to help transform me into a stunning woman. Isabel could tell I was nervous and tried to reassure me with compliments, telling me I had a great figure, beautiful skin, and wonderful facial features. Estelle handed me a pair of padded pants and black tights to change into, which I did, managing to tuck myself in the process. Isabel came in next, holding a black corset, which she wrapped tightly around my waist, adjusting it until I felt my ribs constrict and my stomach flatten. She guided my arms into a matching black bra, filled with latex chest forms, and fastened it at the back. It felt strange but exciting to have chest, and I couldn't help but touch them. I heard giggling from outside the cubicle, but I was too focused to pay attention. When Isabel took my hand and pulled me out, she smiled and said, "You look fantastic. Now let's see what sexy clothes we can find for you." I was led into a spacious dressing room filled with neatly organized racks of clothes, sorted by type, size, and color. I gazed around in awe while Isabel and the girls watched me. Megan eagerly grabbed a short red mini dress, saying, "She must be a size 12. Isabel nodded, but then disagreed, saying, "Not that one. This young lady needs something more refined." Isabel stood in front of me, her hands gliding down my figure with an appreciative sound. "I think a stylish suit will be perfect for you," she said with a smile. By this point, I was completely entranced and responded, "Whatever you think, miss." Isabel reached for a white satin blouse with a large collar and cuffs, wrapped it around me, and fastened it at the front. It fit like it was made for me, and I couldn't help but think that Isabel had done this many times before. She then picked a charcoal business suit and asked me to step into the skirt. She pulled it up, twisted it around, fastened it, and arranged it so the split was high on my left leg. The fit was perfect, tight around my waist and hips, flowing loosely down to my knee. I couldn't resist a small wiggle, which made the girls giggle. "Perfect," Isabel declared, then guided me to a dressing table and sat me in front of a large mirror. I stared at my reflection, thinking, "What are you doing? If anyone from home saw you now." But that thought quickly faded as I ran my hands down the skirt's sides, sliding my fingers under the split. A thrill ran through me. Isabel opened a makeup kit and began her work. She gently held my head, studying my reflection in the mirror, then said, "Say goodbye to the old you, sweetheart." It was in that moment that everything changed. Just 15 minutes later, with Isabel's skillful makeup and a gorgeous shoulder-length brunette wig, I looked in the mirror and couldn't help but smile, a smile that felt more genuine than anything I had ever experienced. The woman staring back at me was vibrant, confident, and happy. Clara had emerged. In that instant, I knew there was no turning back. I was content to let her take the lead while I embraced the new life of excitement and discovery ahead of her. I stood up, turned to Isabel, and hugged her. "Thank you, Isabel. You've done an amazing job." At that moment, Megan and Estelle walked in, almost stunned into silence as they stared at my transformation. I laughed and told them, "Now I just need some heels, jewelry, and a manicure." Megan hurried off to find shoes while I continued posing in front of the mirror, admiring my new, feminine look from every angle.